Spiritually awake people are quietly disappearing from society, and Carl Jung knew this would happen before you were even born. Not dramatically, not with announcements or explanations. They're just vanishing, deleting social media without goodbye posts, leaving careers at their peak, ending relationships that look perfect from outside, choosing complete solitude over another day of pretending to be asleep. They're not depressed, they're not having breakdowns. Jung knew better. They're having breakthroughs so profound that staying visible would destroy what they've become. Jung discovered this accidentally. While treating patients who'd gone too deep into their own psyche, he noticed something that shattered his assumptions about human development. The ones who truly awakened, who actually integrated their unconscious material, they couldn't return to normal life. Not wouldn't, couldn't. Like trying to squeeze back into clothes from childhood. The fit was impossible. These spiritually awake people didn't announce their departure. They just faded, let friendships atrophy, quit jobs without backup plans, deleted social media without goodbye posts, moved without forwarding addresses. Everyone called them selfish, broken, lost. Jung called them something else entirely. He called them individuated, and he said their quiet disappearance from society wasn't just predictable, it was psychologically mandatory. Jung stumbled onto something so disturbing about spiritual awakening that he barely wrote about it directly. He hid it in symbols, buried it in case studies, whispered it to his closest students. The message was this: genuine spiritual development makes you incompatible with collective society, not temporarily, permanently. The more awake you become, the more unbearable normal human interaction gets. Not because you're better than others, but because you're operating from a different psychological operating system entirely, one that can't interface with the collective program anymore. Everyone else is running Society OS 1.0, the base program of unconscious participation. You've accidentally upgraded to something else, and now you're glitching out of the matrix, not by choice but by psychological necessity. Your nervous system literally can't process normal social interaction anymore. Your psyche rejects small talk, like a body rejecting a transplanted organ. Your soul would rather starve in authenticity than feast on collective lies. Jung watched his spiritually awakened patients go through this. The successful businessman who couldn't sit through another meeting, the mother who couldn't pretend to care about PTA drama, the professor who couldn't teach lies he'd transcended. They all thought they were going crazy. Jung knew better. They were going sane. In a world built on collective insanity, sanity looks like madness. And that's why you're about to disappear from society too. Not because you want to, because staying visible requires you to pretend you're someone you can no longer be. Jung discovered something about human society that made him physically sick when he first understood it. Every single social interaction you've ever had was based on an agreement to stay unconscious together. He called it participation mystique, a French term because German didn't have words for this level of psychological horror. It means we're all swimming in the same unconscious soup, thinking we're individuals while actually sharing the same psychological infections, traumas, and delusions. Like fish who don't know they're wet. We don't know we're unconscious. Until we wake up, then the entire game becomes visible, and playing it becomes impossible. Jung saw this firsthand during World War I. He watched educated, intelligent people suddenly possessed by collective madness. Professors who'd discussed philosophy were now baying for blood. Doctors who'd sworn to do no harm were celebrating mass death. Not because they'd changed, because they'd never been individuals at all. They were just walking containers for the collective unconscious, and when it shifted, they shifted with it. This shattered Jung's reality. He realized that what we call society is actually a massive unconscious agreement. We agree to project our shadows onto the same targets. We agree to repress the same truths. We agree to perform the same charades. We agree to call this agreement reality. And it works perfectly, until someone wakes up. The spiritually awake person suddenly sees the projections, like walking into a theater and seeing everyone reacting to shadows on a wall while you can see the projector. You want to scream, "It's not real, look behind you," but they can't hear you over their own reactions to illusions. Jung's patient, a banker who'd undergone analysis, described the horror. "I sit in meetings watching grown men fight over numbers on screens. Not real things, numbers, symbols, digital phantoms. They're getting physically angry, emotionally destroyed, spiritually depleted over electronic hallucinations, and they think I'm the crazy one for not caring." He didn't quit immediately. He tried to participate while awake. Jung documented what happened. First came the nausea, physical, actual nausea from maintaining consciousness while surrounded by unconsciousness. The body rejects psychological dissonance as violently as poison. Then came the exhaustion. Every interaction required simultaneous translation between two incompatible realities, like being the only sober person at a party where everyone's hallucinating, trying to navigate their visions while seeing clearly. Finally came the breaking point. He stood up mid-meeting, walked out, and never returned. Not from anger or judgment, from psychological impossibility. His consciousness could no longer compress itself into unconscious shapes. This is what's happening to spiritually awake people right now. They're seeing through the collective trance. The news isn't information, it's coordinated shadow projection. Social media isn't connection, it's synchronized unconsciousness. Politics isn't governance, it's institutionalized splitting. Work isn't productivity, it's ritualized persona performance. Once you see the machinery, you can't unsee it. Once you spot the trance, you can't re-enter it. Jung learned this personally, after his confrontation with the unconscious, after his Red Book visions, after touching the deepest layers of psyche. He couldn't do faculty meetings anymore, couldn't pretend academic debates mattered, couldn't act like published papers meant anything. His colleagues thought he'd lost his mind. He'd found it, and finding it meant losing the ability to pretend alongside everyone else. Jung made a discovery that ruined his ability to have normal conversations forever. Once you integrate your own shadow, really meet your own darkness, you develop X-ray vision for everyone else's. You can't not see it. The racist who's terrified of his own primitive impulses, the moralizer who's hiding her own corruption, the spiritual teacher who's running from his own evil. Everyone's shadow is visible, screaming, obvious, and they have no idea. It's like being the only one who can see everyone's naked while they think they're clothed. Jung called this the curse of shadow integration. You don't become pure or good or light. You become conscious of your own darkness, and that consciousness acts like a detection system for everyone else's unconscious material. He learned this treating a priest who came for depression. Through months of analysis, the priest finally met his shadow, his doubt, his lust, his rage at God. The integration was successful. The depression lifted. But something else happened that Jung didn't expect. The priest couldn't preach anymore. Not because he'd lost faith, because he could see his congregation's shadows so clearly that pretending to be their moral superior became impossible. Every confession he heard the real sin underneath the stated one. Every moral panic he saw the projection. Every call for righteousness he recognized the hidden darkness seeking a target. I stand at the pulpit, he told Jung, and I see a room full of shadows pretending to be light, and they want me to help them pretend, to point at the sinners out there so they don't have to face the sinner in here. I can't do it anymore. He didn't leave the church dramatically, he just faded away. Shorter sermons, fewer appearances, until one day he was gone, and nobody quite remembered when he'd left. This is what shadow integration does. It makes you allergic to projection, and society runs on projection. Jung discovered that every social group needs designated shadow carriers, the scapegoats who hold everyone else's darkness so they can feel light, the villains who contain everyone's evil so they can feel good, the others who embody everyone's rejected parts so they can feel whole. Once you've integrated your shadow, you can't participate in this. You see that the hated political party carries half the country's shadow. The condemned criminal carries society's violence. The cancelled celebrity carries the mob shame. The dysfunctional family member carries everyone's dysfunction. It's all projection, all of it. And when you stop projecting, something terrifying happens. You become everyone else's projection screen. Jung watched this happen to his analysans repeatedly. The moment someone integrated their shadow, they became magnets for others' projections. The office scapegoat, the family problem, the friend who changed, not because they were doing anything wrong, because they weren't playing the projection game anymore. When you stop projecting your shadow, you create a vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum. Everyone around you will unconsciously try to make you carry what you're no longer projecting. If you won't hate who they hate, you become who they hate. If you won't judge what they judge, you become what they judge. If you won't split reality into good and evil, you become the evil. Jung's own social circle turned on him after his shadow work. Former friends suddenly found him dark, disturbing, difficult. He hadn't changed, he'd integrated, and integration looks like danger to people still splitting. So the spiritually awakened disappear not from enlightenment, but from exhaustion. Tired of being projection screens, tired of watching shadow boxing matches, tired of being the only one who knows that the monster everyone's fighting lives inside them. Jung watched something happen to his patients that medical science couldn't explain. After touching their authentic self, that core beyond all masks, their body physically rejected persona performance. Literal allergic reactions, rashes before board meetings, migraines during small talk, panic attacks while posting on LinkedIn, the body declaring war on its own fakeness. Jung called it persona decomposition, like a snake that can't crawl back into shed skin. The old performance costume doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it becomes biologically impossible to wear. He documented a banker who'd found her authentic self through years of analysis. Monday morning, she put on her power suit, drove to work, walked into the building and collapsed. No medical cause. Her body simply refused to let her perform successful executive one more second. The doctors found nothing. Jung found everything. Her authentic self had grown too strong to be compressed into persona performance. Every cell in her body was rebelling against pretending to be someone she'd never actually been. It's like drowning in air, she told Jung. Everyone else is breathing normally, and I'm suffocating on nothing, on literally nothing, on the absence of reality in that place. This wasn't metaphorical. Her nervous system had evolved beyond persona compatibility. The authentic self operates on different frequencies than persona performance, and once you're tuned to authenticity, the static of falseness causes actual physiological damage. Jung experienced this himself. After his Red Book period, after meeting his authentic self in the depths, he couldn't perform proper Swiss psychiatrist anymore. His body would revolt. Cold sweats at professional dinners, heart palpitations during academic presentations, insomnia after faculty meetings. His colleagues thought he was having a breakdown. He was having a breakthrough so complete that his biology reorganized around authenticity. Here's what Jung discovered that nobody wants to admit. Your persona isn't you with a mask on. It's a completely different entity living in your body, a parasite that's been feeding on your life force since childhood, speaking with your mouth, moving your hands, living your life while you sleep inside. When you finally wake up, finally meet your authentic self, you realize you've been possessed your entire life by something that isn't even real. A performance everyone agreed to pretend was a person. The authentic self doesn't negotiate with personas, it destroys them. Jung watched patient after patient go through persona death. The mother who couldn't perform perfect parent anymore. The professor who couldn't pretend intellectual authority. The therapist who couldn't maintain professional helper. They all thought they were losing their minds. They were losing their personas, which felt like death because for most people persona is all they've ever been. One patient, a surgeon, described the horror. I'm standing over a patient's scalpel in hand and I suddenly don't know who's holding it. Not me, I've never been a surgeon. That was a character I've been playing, but the character is dying, dissolving, and something else is trying to emerge. Something that doesn't know how to perform surgery because it's never performed anything. He had to leave medicine, not from incompetence, but from authenticity. His real self had no relationship with the persona that had gone to medical school, built a practice, saved lives. That was all someone else, someone who didn't exist. This is why spiritually awakened people can't maintain careers. It's not that they become incompetent, they become real. And most professional roles require elaborate persona performance that authentic selves can't execute. Jung saw the pattern clearly. The more successful someone's persona, the more violent its death, and the more impossible their return to society. Jung discovered why conscious people develop chronic fatigue, and it had nothing to do with their bodies. They were bleeding out psychologically. Every interaction with unconscious people was an open wound draining their life force. He called it energy vampirism, but not the way spiritual people use it. This was actual psychological physics. Unconscious people need energy to maintain their unconsciousness. It takes tremendous force to keep shadows buried, trauma frozen, authentic self imprisoned, and they get that energy by feeding on conscious people. Not deliberately, unconsciously, which makes it worse. Jung documented this through a patient, a teacher who'd awakened through analysis. She noticed something terrifying. After every class, she felt like she'd been beaten. not tired, beaten, bruised at a level beneath physical. She started paying attention. Her students weren't just learning from her, they were feeding on her, using her consciousness to temporarily regulate their unconsciousness, borrowing her awareness to avoid developing their own, parasitizing her integration to bypass doing their own shadow work. "I'm not teaching," she told Jung. "I'm being consumed. They don't want education. They want my consciousness without having to develop consciousness. They want my awareness served to them so they can remain asleep." Jung measured this, had her track her energy before and after different interactions. The pattern was undeniable. Time with unconscious people, energy gone. Time with conscious people or alone, energy restored. Not correlation, causation. The unconscious literally feed on consciousness, like moths to flame, except the moths are trying to steal the light, not reach it. This explains why awakened people can't maintain normal relationships. Every unconscious friend is an energy leak. Every family gathering is a buffet where you're the meal. Every social event is a feeding frenzy where conscious people are consumed by those who refuse to develop their own light. Jung saw this in his own life. After his individuation, he had to restructure everything around energy management. No more casual social contact. No more unconscious collaborations. No more pretending that psychological parasitism was friendship. His social circle shrank to almost nothing. Not from elitism, from survival. He discovered something else. Unconscious people don't just drain conscious energy, they actively attack consciousness itself. Like antibodies attacking a virus, the collective unconscious recognizes consciousness as a threat and mobilizes to destroy it. Jung watched this happen to every patient who awakened. The moment someone became conscious, everyone around them would unconsciously conspire to pull them back to sleep. Sudden drama, emotional manipulation, guilt trips, crises that demanded they abandon their development, relationships that suddenly needed saving, family members who suddenly needed help, all perfectly timed to interrupt consciousness development. One patient mapped it out. Every time she made a breakthrough in analysis, within 48 hours, someone would create a crisis requiring her attention. Her mother would get sick. Her husband would start a fight. Her child would have an emergency. Clockwork. Predictable. Unconscious people unconsciously sensing someone escaping the collective trance and mobilizing to pull them back. "It's like they can smell consciousness developing," she told Jung, "and they panic, not consciously. But some part of them knows that if I wake up fully, I won't be available for their projections anymore, so they create situations to keep me engaged with their unconsciousness." Jung's solution was brutal in its simplicity. Complete withdrawal from unconscious energy exchanges. No negotiation, no compromise, no gradual transition. Cut the cords or be drained to death. This is why spiritually awakened people ghost everyone. It's not cruel, it's survival. Every goodbye extends the feeding. Every explanation creates another hook for energy extraction. Every attempt at conscious communication with unconscious people opens another wound. The only solution is disappearance, complete, sudden, without trace. Because the energy you're saving isn't just life force, it's consciousness itself, the very thing that makes awakening possible. Jung discovered that individuation follows the same pattern in every human who undergoes it. And the pattern includes a disappearance so complete that ancient cultures built myths around it. The hermit isn't a lifestyle choice. It's a psychological metamorphosis that requires isolation the way a caterpillar requires a cocoon. Not for comfort, for transformation that would be impossible if interrupted. Jung learned this the hard way. During his confrontation with the unconscious his Red Book years, he tried to maintain normal life. Keep seeing patients, stay connected to colleagues. Remain the good Swiss father and husband. It nearly killed him. The psyche undergoing transformation needs every drop of energy for the work. Like a body fighting cancer can't digest food. A transforming consciousness can't maintain social connections. The energy required for pleasantries, for catching up, for maintaining bonds, that's energy stolen from the metamorphosis. Jung finally understood. He withdrew to Bollingen, built a tower with his own hands. No electricity, no modern conveniences, no visitors unless absolutely necessary. Everyone thought he'd gone mad, he'd gone into chrysalis. "I needed silence," he wrote later. Not quiet, silence. The kind where you can finally hear what's been screaming inside you your whole life, but was drowned out by the noise of being someone. This is what's happening to awakening people now. They're entering their hermit phase, not romantically like some spiritual retreat, brutally like psychological surgery without anesthesia. The hermit phase is when you finally digest your shadow instead of projectile vomiting it onto others. When you integrate your inferior functions instead of living lopsided. When you meet the self, capital S, that entity larger than ego that's been waiting behind all your noise. Jung's patient, a CEO who disappeared for 18 months, described what happens in true hermitage. The first 3 months, you're still performing for an imaginary audience. Even alone, you're explaining yourself to invisible judges. Month 4, the performance exhausts itself. Month 6, you meet who you are when no one's watching. Month 9, you realize that person is a stranger. Month 12, you start becoming who you actually are. Month 18, you can't imagine going back. He didn't return to corporate life. How could he? The person who'd been CEO no longer existed. Someone else had emerged from the cocoon. Someone who couldn't even remember why stock prices mattered. This is the terror of the hermit phase. You don't know who you'll be when you emerge. The self that enters isolation isn't the self that exits. And you can't skip it, can't fast forward, can't half-ass it. Jung watched patients try to do hermit light, maintain some connections, keep one foot in society, check social media occasionally, stay partially available. They all failed, either pulled back into collective unconsciousness or collapsed from trying to serve two masters. The hermit phase demands everything. Your social identity dies in that cave. Your carefully constructed life becomes meaningless. Your achievements reveal themselves as persona trophies. Your relationships expose themselves as unconscious contracts. And in that death, in that absolute aloneness, something else is born. Jung called it the self, but that word is too small for what emerges. It's you without the performance, you without the accommodations, you without the trauma adaptations, you without the collective contamination. You for the first time, actually you. One analyst told Jung, I spent 2 years completely alone. Everyone forgot I existed. I forgot I existed, the I. They all knew. And in that forgetting I remembered something. Not who I was, who I am, who I've always been underneath the puppet show. She never fully returned to society. She couldn't. The puppet was dead, and the real self had no interest in puppet shows. This is why the spiritually awakened are disappearing into hermitage. Not for peace, for death and rebirth, for transformation so complete that return becomes impossible. Jung discovered something that spiritual teachers won't tell you. The awakened who disappear don't come back enlightened and ready to save humanity. They come back ruined for normal life, permanently expatriated from consensus reality. They become what Jung called border dwellers. Not fully in society, never fully out. Living on the edges where consciousness can exist without drowning in collective unconsciousness. Like immigrants who can never return home because home no longer exists. The place is still there, but you can't inhabit it. You've changed at a cellular level. You breathe different air now. Jung met these border dwellers throughout his life. The professor who taught only private students in his garden. The doctor who treated only terminal patients ready for truth. The artist who stopped showing in galleries and painted only for the few who could see. They weren't failures. They were refugees from collective unconsciousness who'd found ways to survive at the margins. One of them, a former banker turned craftsman, explained the border-dwelling life to Jung. I make furniture now, by hand, alone. I sell to maybe 3 people a year who can feel what I've put into the wood. Not my skill, my consciousness. The rest of the world thinks I've fallen from banking to carpentry. They can't see I've risen from sleepwalking to being awake. This is the model. You don't return to transform society. Society can't be transformed by individuals. It's a collective organism that changes only through collective forces. You return to offer something to other individuals who are ready to disappear. Jung saw the pattern clearly. The awakened create parallel structures, shadow networks, invisible colleges, not to hide, but because consciousness requires different architecture than unconsciousness. They build therapy practices that don't look like therapy, schools that don't look like education, businesses that don't look like commerce, communities that don't look like society, all operating on different principles than the collective systems they've abandoned. Jung himself became a border dweller. After his hermit phase, he didn't return to mainstream psychiatry. He worked from his tower, saw only specific patients, wrote books the establishment rejected, developed ideas academics couldn't metabolize. He wasn't trying to change psychiatry. He was creating something else entirely for those who needed what psychiatry couldn't provide. The border dwellers recognize each other instantly, not through words or symbols, but through frequency, like instruments tuned to the same impossible note that doesn't exist in the standard scale. They find each other in bookshops at 3 a.m., in forests where nobody walks, in comment sections of obscure writings, in waiting rooms of healers who work without licenses. They don't network, they constellate, forming loose temporary configurations based on consciousness resonance, not social connection. Jung's patient, a woman who disappeared for 3 years, described finding other border dwellers. You know them immediately. They have the same look, like immigrants from the same country nobody else knows exists. We don't need to explain why we can't go back. We all know. We've all seen what can't be unseen. These border dwellers don't evangelize, don't recruit, don't try to wake people up. They know awakening can't be given, only chosen, and most people would rather die than choose it. So they simply exist at the borders, available but not pursuing, present but not participating, creating lighthouses, not rescue missions. If you're ready to leave the collective shore, you'll see their light. If you're not, you won't even know they exist. This is where the spiritually awakened are disappearing to. Not to some ethereal dimension, to the borders of consensus reality. Close enough to remember why they left, far enough to preserve what they've become. Building new worlds in the ruins of their old ones. Jung's final insight changes everything. The spiritually awakened aren't disappearing from society. Society is disappearing from their reality. They're not leaving, they're arriving somewhere else. A psychological location that exists in the same physical space but at a different frequency of consciousness. Like tuning into a radio station that's always been broadcasting but nobody had the equipment to receive. This isn't ascension, it's divergence. Two species emerging where there was one, Homo sapiens and Homo conscious, occupying the same planet but inhabiting different worlds. Jung saw this split coming, predicted that consciousness would eventually become so unbearable for the unconscious, and unconsciousness so unbearable for the conscious, that they'd stop being able to coexist, not through war or conflict, through simple incompatibility. Like trying to run different operating systems on the same hardware. Eventually you have to choose. The awakened have chosen. Not consciously, but through psychological necessity. Their consciousness has evolved past the point of backward compatibility. They can't downgrade to unconsciousness any more than you can unknow what you know. So they're building their own civilization in the cracks of the old one. Invisible to those who haven't awakened. Obvious to those who have. Jung knew this was evolution in action. Not everyone evolves simultaneously. The pioneers go first, establish beachheads of consciousness, create refuges for the next wave. What looks like abandonment is actually architecture. If you're feeling the pull to disappear, you're not antisocial. You're post-social. You're not abandoning anyone. You're pioneering where they'll eventually need to go. Your isolation isn't personal, it's archetypal. Your withdrawal isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And evolution doesn't ask permission. But Jung discovered something darker. Before the disappearance, there's always one final trap. One last relationship pattern, so psychologically violent it makes withdrawal mandatory. Conscious women know exactly what I'm talking about. The unavailable man who appears right before your complete awakening. Jung knew why this happens. Watch the video on your screen now.